There we go.
Filter, which something called a DNS filter, which ends up filtering bad traffic trying to come into your router. And then John Thomas also asked, do you recommend changing email and other passwords that require passwords to entities that require them to access their business website from time to time, or passwords to our laptops and phones? Yes, changing your passwords every so often inherently makes them way more secure, way less prone for your account to get compromised, just because if you change your password every so often, it wouldn't work even if somebody had access to it 3 months ago. So I would highly recommend changing your passwords or your laptops, your passwords to everything, not only your actual devices, but also your accounts. Just makes it way more secure, as you had stated there. More thoughts on that. I would highly suggest, I don't think I get into it in this presentation, but password managers are almost exclusively way more secure than you guys managing your passwords on your own. So what do I mean by that? There are two apps that I know of: KeePass, that's Keepass, and the one that I personally use, which is LastPass, LastPass. These two pieces of software, they're password managers that I can connect to my laptop, my cell phone, my desktop. And what they do is they generate insanely secure passwords. So if I went back to the graph that I showed you, I'm talking like 20-digit long passwords with unreadable text, like combinations of like tons of different special characters and stuff like that. And what they do is they make it super easy for you to fill in these passwords on all of your websites. And it's just an easy way to manage all of your passwords. So I would recommend, instead of you guys having to change all of your passwords automatically or manage your setting of your own passwords, or, and don't raise your hand and tell me this, but I know because I was guilty of it in the past, there is a piece of paper or a folder or something, a Post-it note in your house, or possibly right next to you guys watching this right now, with all of your passwords on it. And if you lost it, your life would pretty much end. Password managers get rid of that from ever occurring, right? Because it's just a piece of software. And then the way the password managers work is you just have one master password that is really long and complicated that you are supposed to write down and keep very secure, so that if you ever lost access to your password manager, all you would need is that password. But then the password manager just manages every other account you could possibly have. So I have hundreds and hundreds of passwords that are managed by my password manager that I pay for. And LastPass specifically, it has a free tier. It's pretty good, so it's not expensive at all. And then even if you wanted to upgrade to the paid tier like I have, it's like $2 a month. So it's very secure, it's very cheap, and it just makes things way easier for you when managing passwords. Then Linda says, if your verification is to text or to give a phone call, can someone pretend to have that phone number and get a text sent into your account? What I think you're asking is, can somebody receive a text message that was supposed to go to you? Very, very, very unlikely that that ever happens. As long as if you actually have your cell phone with you, like if they had access to your phone, then obviously they could have the text message that sends to your phone number. But having someone being able to spoof your cell phone number and get a text sent to them, very unlikely. I don't want to say it's impossible, because nothing is impossible, but very unlikely that that would ever occur. So it's not an issue. Now, let me just reread that one more time. If your verification is to text or to get a phone call, can someone pretend to have that phone number and get a text sent into your account? Yeah, so I'll say very unlikely that happens. One thing that I do see, if you don't have multi-factor authentication set up on your accounts, so this is for everything where you could just log in with a username or password. I have seen examples and heard stories of where somebody else will gain access to the account, then set up multi-factor authentication, but with their phone number instead. So in that instance, they're not impersonating your phone number. They are just saying that this is the phone number we're sending it to, and they're sending it to themselves. At that point, it is very hard for you to get access to your account after that point, because they can not only reset the password, but they can also just have multi-factor authentication set up for their own account, for their own phone numbers. So that's why I recommend everybody set up multi-factor authentication the second you create a new account. It's because of how much more secure that makes your account, how much harder it would be for anyone to gain access, And if you don't set it up and somebody gets access, they can set it up for themselves, and it becomes a very painful process to undo that. So, third topic we should get into. And I love these questions, by the way. If any of you have any more, please put them in the chat. This is where people get the most value, is in these kinds of questions. If they apply to yourself, if they apply to your business, or maybe your family members, I'd love to answer them all for you. So updating your software. What I want to go over today, and specifically software, because I know everyone's heard that word, but it's kind of this nebulous topic, is there are two types of software that I want you guys to take away from today. The first is your operating system. So examples of this are Windows, Mac OS, and maybe if you're a little bit more tech savvy, it'll be Linux. So there are very popular operating systems. And then there's other pieces of software that maybe you download to your computer, such as Zoom, such as Google Chrome, or Microsoft Edge, or anything like that. And then there are, so those are the two pieces of software. So it's operating systems and then just programs that you download. So you need to make sure that you're updating both types of software. So that is not only your operating system, but also all the programs that you downloaded. So think about it like this. If there was a security vulnerability in your operating system, that would be like the foundation of your home having a crack in it. So it's a it's a severe security vulnerability. However, if you update your operating system, or if you have it set to automatic updates, or don't ignore that little warning that I sometimes ignore, even though I tell people not to, that pops up in the seemingly the most inconvenient times on your screen that says, hey, you have a Windows update. Make sure you go update it, or schedule it for sometime later today. That is, most often those updates are for two reasons. They are not only giving you performance improvements or making it easier to use Windows, but also there are a slew of security patches or security updates that are often put into these software updates as well. So that's why it's super important that you end up updating your operating system, such as Windows or Mac OS, because it keeps your foundation, so to speak, secure. Now, programs. Having your programs regular update is still important, because if you don't update those regularly and there's a security vulnerability in those programs, that's like leaving a door in your house unlocked, or leaving one of your windows unlocked, or something like that. So it's not necessarily as serious as having a crack in your foundation, but it's still somebody, if they tried to open the door, or maybe jiggled the window a little bit, they'd be able to get in. And so it's still a vulnerability. And you can typically, most programs that you download today automatically update themselves, or they'll force you to update the software if they detect you're using an out-of-date version. So it's not something you have to worry about specifically, but it's still something you should be aware of. So updating these things keeps you secure. And please do not ignore the updates like I sometimes do. Schedule it, or find, usually they're very quick. Schedule it or take some time to end up updating your operating system, or anything else. So how can you actually do this? So first, on the left here, we have an example of what it would look like for Windows. So for Windows, you just click the start button, go to settings, go to updates and security, and click Windows Update. And you would see a screen. If you're up to date, you'd see a screen exactly like this, which is you're up to date, last checked, and then when you'd end up last checking. But if not, you'd see a button here that would be to either download the updates and install them, or to schedule that for at some point in the future. Now, if you guys are viewing this on a Mac, or if you use Macs, all you have to do is click the Apple menu, click Software Update, and then if it's available, you'd see something just like this. The update is available for your Mac, update now. So now I'm not sure what percentage of you are using Macs or Windows, but Macs do this. Apple devices automatically what's called deprecate. And what that means is every 6 years, Apple will mandate that laptops, desktops, whatever you buy from them that are 6 years old are not able to get any more security updates. So while that is not instantaneously make you vulnerable, if you're not replacing your Apple devices every 6 years, you are slowly going to accrue security vulnerabilities because you're not getting any security updates. That's just what Apple does. Windows doesn't really do that. However, I do know that some older devices cannot upgrade to new Windows Windows 10 or Windows 11 because of how old they are. So that's just something to be aware of when you buy an Apple device. Donna says, is My Clean PC good? I've actually never even heard of My Clean PC. So if you could put in the chat, just describe it a little bit. I've never used it, I should say. I use a program called C Cleaner. That's C and then cleaner, so that's 2 C's. And all that does is get rid of extraneous files that are on my device, such as downloads that I don't need anymore, and also make sure that a lot of my software, a lot of my what's called software drivers are up to date. So if you're looking for something that's going to clean, it looks like it's cleaning your PC or making sure everything's running smoothly, I would recommend a program called C Cleaner. There's a great free tier that I use for C Cleaner, but you can also pay for some additional stuff that ends up being super powerful as well. Yep. Awesome. So now we're going to get into phishing. So phishing, some of you may have heard, it's not phishing with an F, it's phishing with a PH, is essentially when somebody attempts to portray a company or an individual. What they're trying to do is they're trying to fool you into you releasing information to them or giving them access to some piece of software or giving them your passwords. Or the most common scam that I hear is, hey, we need you to buy $500 in prepaid Visa gift cards and I need you to send me the codes. I have heard, and I'm not joking, every single company that I have worked with has a story of somebody where that happened to them. So it is a problem. People are going out, they're spending their own money buying these gift cards for something that should be labeled clearly as a spam. So I'll say it right here. If anyone ever emails you, calls you, texts you, Microsoft Teams messages you, puts it in a Zoom chat, I don't care where you see this, and says, I need you to buy me prepaid gift card and send me the code, you should do 2 things. You should assume it's a phish, it's a scam. And then you should, if you really think that you need to do that, go physically talk to that person or call them. Like if it's your boss or if it's your coworker, or if it's your family member, go talk to them. Give them a phone call and wait until they respond. I have never seen an instance where somebody actually needed that. It has always been a scam. So do me a favor, please don't give me another story where somebody lost their hard-earned money to a scam. If somebody's asking for prepaid Visa gift cards, don't do it. So some stats. So why is phishing such a big problem? So 91% of data breaches start with a phishing email. What that should really say is 91% of breaches, 91% of security issues that are discovered have phishing in it in some way, shape, or form. So this is not a unique problem to maybe people on this call who have had issues with it in the past, or anyone in your family who has had issues with getting money stolen or accounts taken over because you got phished out of it. This is a very, very prevalent problem that many people still struggle with to this day. So don't feel like you're alone. And then only 11% of organizations continually train their employees to recognize their attacks. So if you have a small business or if you're a part of a large organization, you should be training not only yourself, but all of your employees to recognize these attacks. And it's as simple as, sending a 5-minute training video once a month, right? Everyone has 5 minutes to try to recognize these attacks, and then potentially doing what is called some phishing assessments, some phishing tests, where you send fake emails, usually with the help of another provider, to attempt to phish your employees. And then when they get phished, instead of losing their money or their accounts, they just get a warm welcome screen that says, hey, this was a phishing test and you should have recognized it, and here's how you can do that in the future. So those are 2 things you can do. But how big of a problem is this? Well, according to the FBI in 2019, phishing accounted for over 12 billion in losses. So it is if it had to be classified as an industry, phishing and social engineering is another form. Phishing is a form of social engineering. It's a huge industry. It's a huge problem, not only monetarily, but also in people's lives as well, not having access to their accounts. So there are 4 types of phishing that we'll go through. First is vishing, which is voicemail phishing. It's receiving scam voicemails. I don't know that I can take a poll, but if I did, I feel like every single person on this call would have received a voicemail from the IRS at some point that says you need to call them and give them a couple $1,000 or you're going to go to jail. That would be an example of voicemail phishing. SMS phishing is just receiving a fishy text. I receive them all the time from your Netflix account is, God forbid, right? My Netflix account is going to be expired if I don't end up paying a fee, or my Amazon package was attempted to be delivered and I need to respond in 5 minutes, or I'm going to have to wait another 2 days to get the cool coffee mug that I ordered, or whatever it ends up being. And then email phishing is just receiving an email that is somebody pretending to be somebody else or pretending to be from a different company, trying to get you to divulge information or send them money directly. So I'll go into how to recognize all of these different types of attacks. And then I left out social engineering. So social engineering is roughly the broader class of these things. And then phishing, SMS phishing, email phishing are all different types of social engineering. Social engineering is just somebody pretending to be somebody else to get access or to get information or to get money or something that they want from you. And then phishing, social SMS phishing and phishing are just examples of that. So analyzing a phishing email, let's start there. There are 5 questions that you can ask yourself that if you answered these honestly and correctly, it would go a very long way to prevent any phishing from occurring. So the first is, are you expecting this email? If somebody emails you from your past or a coworker you never talk with out of the blue, trying to get you to do something, that is not necessarily proof that it's phishing, but it's a red flag. Is this email too good to be true? FOMO is a big thing that everyone deals with on a daily basis, and malicious individuals on the internet know this. So they'll often offer you a deal. They'll often offer you some kind of incentive to log into a different account or give them some information because you don't want to miss out on that opportunity that they're presenting you with. So is it too good to be true is something you should actually ask yourself. Third, does the email domain match the sender? And I'll get into what that means in a second, but it's just a way of confirming the authenticity of the person that's actually sending you this email. And I'll show you how to do that in a second. Fourth, when you hover over a link, where does it go? So I'm not sure if all of you are aware of this, but before you click on a button, before you click on a link, you can hover over it. And if you hover over it in the bottom left-hand side of your screen, or sometimes really at your mouse pointer, you'll see the actual web address that you're being rerouted to, that you're going to end up visiting if you click on it. So you want to make sure that that web address that comes up when you hover actually matches what you expect. So if it's a link from Facebook, you want to make sure you're going somewhere on facebook.com, so on and so forth. And the fifth, can you confirm the authenticity of the email? So what do I mean by that? Can you call the person? Can you text the person? Can you walk to their office? Can you walk into the next room and see them? If somebody's asking you, if they email you out of the blue, asking for something that is kind of weird, can you just call them and confirm the authenticity via some other way? So that's what I would always recommend, just confirm the authenticity of that individual. So these are the 5 questions. You'll have access to this recording and these slides after the fact. So you can come back, you can print these out, you can do whatever you want. But really all of these, this is not a lengthy process. You can get this down into roughly 3 or 4 seconds of every email that you open up. So if you open up an email, all it takes is 3 or 4 seconds to end up figuring out, answering these questions honestly. So vulnerabilities in phishing emails that we'll go through. So I'm going to teach you guys how to recognize some common ways hackers try to phish you. So the first type of vulnerability is what's called domain impersonation, or you might have heard of this called typo squatting. Really what that means is, if you can see down here in the bottom left, they get a domain name. It's very, very common that is very close to what you expect. So Google is spelled with a U, and Amazon is spelled with an extra O, and Home Depot doesn't have that second E. What they're expecting is that you read HOM Depot and you just glanced over it so quick that you didn't realize that there wasn't a second E. So that's called typo squatting. Now let's go over different ways that domains can be impersonated. So if I had an example domain, so bigcompany.com, that's what so Facebook, Google, et cetera, et cetera. If I had a domain that was bigcompany.com, here's an example of what is called a root domain impersonation. So instead of having bigcompany.com, I have bigcompany-mailer.com. .com. So this is what's called the primary domain, right? Big company mailer. The thing that is most important for you when you're confirming the authenticity of an individual is to make sure that this root domain matches exactly what you expect. So that is the thing that comes right before the ending, the .com, the .biz, the .org, .net. You want that to be exactly what you expect. Then there's top-level domain impersonation. So as you can see, there is a .info here. There are something like 120 different possible domain endings that websites can have, that email addresses can have, such as .info, .net, .org, .biz, even .party is one, and I'm not joking about that. So top-level domain is where they'll get big company as the root domain, but then they'll end up having a different ending than what you expect. 99.9% of companies use .com endings. So if you get an email that's a little suspicious, or you're on a website that doesn't have the .com or some other very common thing like .net or .org, I would just be a little suspicious of what you end up looking at and how you can end up what you're potentially looking at, essentially. Then there's subdomain impersonation. So the root domain here in this example is actually insecuremail.com. It's insecure mail. It's not big company. So big company here would be an example of a root domain. And you can see that just because there is a second dot, and then there is no top-level domain that ends directly after that. So the root domain here would be insecure mail, but what this is expecting you to believe is that you see CEO at big company, and then you glance off of it from that point forward. And then just a typical typo squat, CEO at big company, and there's a 0 instead of no. So always, when you're receiving an email from somebody, take a little bit of time to actually see what exact email address, what the domain, if there's any subdomains, is there a weird ending? Take a look and actually see who or what is sending that to you. Second type of vulnerability is display name impersonation. So here, supposedly there was somebody named Josiah Carberry, maybe a friend of yours, that is emailing you. So Josiah Carberry, what they're expecting is in a lot of email providers, such as Outlook, Gmail, Yahoo, potentially, this JJ White 003, which is the actual email address, is often hidden, and the only thing that's displayed is Josiah Carberry. So this display name impersonation, what they're expecting is that you're not going to click this little caret right here, and you're not going to end up seeing the actual email address that's sending you the information. So that's an example of display name impersonation. Just because somebody has the display name that you expect does not mean they have the email address. It should be attached with it. So that's something that you should be aware of and be able to detect. And the last vulnerability that we'll go through for emails specifically is malicious links and images. So I have a fake email, or rather fake website here that looks realistic. It has the right IRS logo. It's too good to be true though. It has a link with a hidden URL. So when I hover over get started, it ends up going to a weird carrybaptist.org.uk. So it is very clear after looking at this, right? Something that's too good to be true. When is the IRS giving you money back is a question I asked. And if you hover over it, it's not going to irs.gov or some actual .gov trusted website, right? It's going to some weird UK-based website that is definitely not affiliated with the IRS. So the only way you would have been able to detect this in theory is you would have hovered over get started and realized that it's not going to irs.gov. So always make sure you're looking out for malicious links and images. Here's something people don't know. Images, right? Just a photo. You can typically click on them and they will typically send you to a web address on the internet, right? So you can put on an image a link to go somewhere else. So before you click on an image, even hover over the image and see if anything shows up here on the bottom right-hand side of your screen. I see both of your guys' questions. I have one more stop at the end where I'll answer all questions for you guys. So SMS and voice phishing, how can you avoid it? For Cozad, I'll get into this in a second. SMS just means text messages. So 4 rules for getting a text message or a voicemail that are a little suspicious. First, don't give out your information. So if somebody calls you asking for a lot of sensitive information, where you were born, maybe what your account information is, what your banking information is, Don't give that out ever. If you're actually getting a call from your bank for a security issue, they will have all the information they need. So you won't need to give out any sensitive information at that point. 2, contact only through secure channels. So what do I mean by that? On every bank that you use, any business that you use, if you go to their actual website, they'll have phone numbers that you can use to contact them, or email addresses or inboxes, or a live chat app on their websites these days. Those would be examples of secure channels of communication. If you are physically going to the website or going to the chat there on the actual website of the bank that you're working with, that is a secure channel. That is definitely where you're reaching out to somebody that you know is a representative of the bank. So if you ever get a call from somebody at your bank and you're not sure if they're actually realistic, tell them you'll call them back, or you'll reach back out to them immediately on the secure numbers that are listed on their website, or the secure ways that are listed on their website. And then any bank that you work with should never, ever, ever discourage you from doing that. You should never be discouraged from contacting an organization that is dealing with your banking, or maybe your healthcare or anything, through the secure channels that they have put on their website. They should never discourage you from doing that. So if you're talking with supposedly an institution, and they're telling you that you can't hang up the phone, you can't call them back, that you can't text them back on a secure line that you're able to find on their website, be very, very suspicious of that, because there should never be a company that discourages you from doing something that is secure. 3rd, be suspicious. It always benefits you to be suspicious. If somebody's calling you and asking you for some payment information, or things that would be clearly answers to security questions like your mother's maiden name and stuff, be suspicious. And 4th, this leads right into the 4th, refuse the requests. You can always refuse the request and then go back to number 2 and contact them back through secure channels. If there's actually an issue with any of your accounts, whether they think somebody's gotten access that didn't necessarily wasn't you, or if there's an issue with payment or anything like that, always contact them through secure channels. It always benefits you, and you'll be able to handle the problem at that point forward. So before I move on, I always bring up the fact that sometimes the way phishing works on your phone or voicemail or text is the people that you're talking with will ask you for your password to your account. So 2 things I want to say about that. 1, it is your password for your account. It is not theirs, right? They don't even know your password. A company you work with should never, ever, ever know your password. The 2nd, do not ever give out your password to anyone who calls you, texts you, emails you, or does anything and saying they need it to get access to your account to verify anything. That is your password. That is your access to your account. And if your bank, if your healthcare provider, if a hospital, or anything that calls you and asks for that, they do not need your password to get the information they need from their platform, right? So if somebody's calling you, asking you for a password, it is, I hate to say always, but it is, I can't think of a scenario where somebody would legitimately ask for your password and it's not you getting fished out of your account information. So never, ever, ever give your password out to anyone that is asking for it, even if you think they are from the institution that you are actually talking with. Never give out your password to that individual. It is not theirs. It is your password. And if they really were from that institution, they should have access to everything they need. So never give it out. So what do these look like? What does SMS phishing look like? What does voicemail phishing look like? So SMS phishing is just receiving a text message on your iPhone, your Android device, whatever you end up having. There's often very little to no information. So as you can see right here on the left, it just says iCloud, your ID requires verification, and then it has a weird domain. All right, so we ended up, we went through this earlier. So there are 2 things here that are suspicious. 1, it's not apple.com. It's ID-Apples, not Apple. And then also it's not .com, it's not .org, it's not .net. It's a weird .mobi, which stands for like mobile, ending. So it's very clear to me when I look at this, it's very clear this is not from Apple, right? This is from another company pretending to be Apple, probably to get you to sign in, and so they could steal your iCloud information and maybe get your payment information from your iCloud account. So there's often little to no information. There's usually an appeal of urgency, which is essentially your ID needs verification, and the intention is if you don't verify, well, then you're out of luck, and your account's gonna get disbanded or something. So it's often an appeal of urgency from an unknown sender. Now, voicemail phishing. Never give out your login information. This will look different depending upon if you're getting a call from an actual person or maybe a robot. Never give out your login info. Always be suspicious, and keep in mind your password never needs to be reset. Now, there are cases where your password does need to be reset, but you're not going to get a voicemail that's asking you to give you for you to give them the password, right? If you actually need to reset your password, you can go to your banking website, to your healthcare provider website, to your hospital's website, wherever you need to go to reset this password. And you can do that on your own without them. They never need to know that information. So I'll say it again. Never give out your password to anyone that is ever calling, texting, emailing, or even talking with you. You do not ever need to give out your password. It is your password. It is not theirs. It is the way you get access, not them. So if you really think your password might need to be reset, which we broached this subject earlier, passwords should be reset every so often just to be more secure. You can do that through the website, through the app, or whatever, however you interface with that platform or that product, and you can do that on your own without them. So you don't need them to be a part of it. So this is the last stop for the pause for questions. So I'm going to go through, I see 3 questions that popped up that I will go through, but if you guys have questions, if you I get a lot of questions about antivirus, I get a lot of questions about different computers people potentially purchase, please put them in the chat. This is where you guys get the most value, specific questions to you guys and your business. So John goes, I use Norton 360 for a laptop, and it is functionally called Norton Power Eraser, which is supposed to eliminate difficult to detect threats. I've never used it. Thoughts? So that's like an example of antivirus. So the way antivirus works is every potentially malicious piece of software has like a signature, right? It's kind of like a fingerprint. And these big antivirus platforms such as Norton, Windows Defender is a little better, such as Norton, I'll just stop there. Norton, what they do is when you download a piece of software or there's something that's running on your computer, they fingerprint the piece of software that they recognize, and they check in a huge database. Like, do we have this fingerprint, and is it known to be malicious? That's how antivirus works. So antivirus does add a layer of protection on top of something, on top of like Windows Defender comes immediately with Windows, and it's very good. So it's definitely an additional layer of protection, but it is not foolproof. So there, does not mean you will be impervious from any type of attack or potential issue, but it does make you a little more secure. Kazat says, what does SMS mean? Why can't my flip cell phone allow me to open up SMS messages? I'm not sure. SMS just means text messages, so you should be able to receive and send text messages there as well. Now, you won't get iMessage. iMessage is the blue bubbles on iPhones. For that, you would need an iPhone, but you should still be able to receive text messages. Lore, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, says, any tips for Facebook protection from hackers other than secure passwords? Yes, enable multi-factor authentication. And then I believe they now have a way for you to verify your identity in a different way. Again, the more steps of protection you add to your account, such as a more secure password, multi-factor authentication with your phone, or with an authenticator app, that would make it way more secure. Is Windows Defender recommended? Yes, I recommend Windows Defender. They recently made it really good. I would highly recommend everyone use Windows Defender. I think it comes default with Windows. You just have to configure it. Stanley says, all my devices are not my own, and mental isolation phishing campaigns to cause artificial stagnation. Stanley, I'm not sure what your question is, but if you could rephrase that so I could understand it a little better, I'd be happy to answer that. And then Linda in the Q&A says, how can you stop emails or texts from companies you do not want emails or texts from anymore? So I'll answer that first question. You can unsubscribe from every email. If you don't have an unsubscribe link, you can block that email address in your email provider. Same thing with texts. You can block that text provider. If you're getting if you're getting a text from like Amazon, there's almost always a setting in your Amazon account where you can turn that off. The second question she asked, is it safe to click the unsubscribe link they might offer? So this is actually something I go over with all of my clients that I work with in Phin. The unsubscribe links at the end of emails can still be malicious because at the end of the day, it's just a link that can send you anywhere else on the internet. So while most unsubscribe links are valid and they just send you to the place where you can unsubscribe from the communications you're getting, still make sure you hover over that unsubscribe link and look what pops up in the bottom left-hand side of your screen before you click on it. Or same thing with text messages. Same question for text or emails that you did not get to sign up for a request. At the end of the day, so spam, there's two things. Spam is not phishing necessarily. Spam is just sometimes super annoying. But you can almost always block the text. It's like I can block phone numbers, which I do. And then actually Apple, in one of their recent updates to your iPhone, released the ability where you can automatically deny, not only detect, but also deny spam calls that are most likely spam. I turned that on and my life has gotten infinitely better as a result. So do with that what you will. It's not foolproof. I still get weird phone calls sometimes, but it's definitely helped. The same thing with email. You can block email addresses from sending you anything. And then just before you click the unsubscribe link, make sure you hover over and see if it's going anywhere suspicious. So other than that, Stanley, don't know if you wanted to rephrase that as a question. Okay, there it is. Third party. I cannot log into. So for Stanley, I think your question is, how can you get access to these things that you've been locked out of? I actually have my email address right here. So if you wanted to contact me, I could help you work through that. I don't know that this is the proper forum to discuss this exactly. Yeah, but you could email me and I can third-party super administrator status, including locked out of social media accounts. I cannot log into business Instagram. Oh, business accounts are a little different than personal accounts. I will say that there is a like role-based access is what it's called. So if you don't have the super admin status of your your Facebook ad account or your I think Instagram has a similar thing. That is accurate. So I would treat it like the security of that a little more serious than your personal account. So you can force multi-factor authentication on all of your administrators in those types of accounts. That's what I would recommend. That's what I do. That's what a lot of companies I work with do. So I would highly recommend doing that. Instagram account now calls verification notes never to be delivered to devices. That sounds like a mismatch between the way you've set up multi-factor authentication and maybe putting in the wrong phone number or the wrong app, not properly syncing the app. So if you have any more questions, if you have any more questions on that, just send me an email at this address right here. And I see that there is one more. Are there any recommendations for resources to help us educate on this topic? I know the SBDC, but I'll let Carmen answer that. I think the SBDC has a lot of resources for this actually.
Yeah. I can chime in. If any broader questions that you guys have that aren't explicitly for Connor, you can always shoot an email to spdc@temple.edu and they could get back to you with some more resources on this as well. And also just a little note here, I posted a link in the chat to a 60-second survey about today's webinar. We value your feedback and it is required by our funders. So spdc@temple.edu and survey. And yes, you will get a recording of this session.
Rochelle has one more question. Can you recommend any security options for those with companies handling medical data? So I'm assuming you are the company that is handling the medical data. Make sure you have training for HIPAA compliance. It's HIPAA. That is the standard that regulates how you should transmit, store, communicate, keep, destroy any type of personal healthcare information. So look into that. And the reality is there are many security companies that can help you with not only HIPAA audits, but also making sure you're HIPAA compliant. Some of them can get a little pricey. However, the cost of being HIPAA non-compliant is enormous. So I would highly recommend reaching out to a HIPAA compliance specialist.
All right, and we are looking pretty good in the chat. So Connor, if you're good to close out, I'm all good on my end.
Awesome. I'm great to close out. And please visit the website if you have any questions on this. I do phishing and security awareness for many, many companies. But here's my email as well. Send me some questions that you might have if you think of them.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your week.
Bye.
Bye-bye.